Yes, and we should. The right path.
I have, I've got it in.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the regular council meeting for Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. We respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather and work is on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. There are no introduction or approval of late items. If I can get a motion to approve the agenda.
Moved.
Any questions or comments on the agenda this evening? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. We have two delegations this evening, so I will welcome up Twyla Skinner from the Comox Valley Farmers Market Association. She's going to update us on our first year of the Comox Market and looking ahead to 2026. So welcome, and I'll just get you to have the mic go red there so they can hear you online, Twyla. We might have a tech issue on one.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
That's okay. I'll start anyways. Good evening. Are we good to go? Okay.
To come off any of the other mics? Hello? Hello?
All right. Okay. All right. Good evening. It's great to be back here today in front of Mayor, Council, and staff to give an update on the Comox Valley Farmers Market. For those that don't know me, my name is Twyla, and I'm the General Manager for the Comox Valley Farmers Market. I want to first start off by saying, wow. Although we've had smaller activations in the town of Comox in the past, this is the first time we've run a market at this capacity. We weren't sure what to expect, as there's so many variables when you start a new market in a new location. The amount of support, the positive feedback for this market, and the weekly comments about the need for the farmers market in Comox, and for all the people thanking us for being there was just incredible. There's no other way to say it. We couldn't have asked for a better first season. So before we get started on a deep dive into the first season, I wanted to give a quick overview of the Comox Valley Farmers Market Association. We are a local nonprofit organization rooted in agriculture, and our mandate is to promote and support the economic health of the local farm and food community and to educate the public on agricultural issues. All of our products sold at the market are made, baked, grown, raised, and wild harvested in the Comox Valley and Strathcona regional districts. And approximately 90% of the vendors reside within a 20-kilometer radius of the exhibition grounds. So when we talk about food miles, which is the distance the food is transported from the time of the making until it reaches the customer, we are about 20 kilometers, which is awesome. If we take a look at this chart, about 8% of our vendors from the Comox market came from Comox, or of our total vendors, sorry, are from Comox. At the market on Wednesday, we had 7 vendors that were located in the immediate area, making the food miles almost zero. So we are a food-only farmer-first farmers market. We operate for the past 33 years, and although we are an artisan market, although we love our artisans, we do not have artisans at our market. And our membership is composed of about 50 to 60% farmers, with the remaining bakers, processors, concession, herbalists, which are soap and body care products, and liquor vendors. And the Comox market had a similar distribution, and this is the distribution from the market this year. So it's not exact, but it follows the same line. We currently have one year-round market, which is on Saturdays, as well as 2 summer seasonal markets, one on Sunday in Cumberland and one on Wednesdays here in the town of Comox. We also participate in the BC Association of Farmers Market Nutrition Coupon Program, and that provides $27 a week in coupons for pregnant individuals, young families, and seniors across BC to purchase fresh fruit, vegetables, meat, eggs, nut, and dairy over a 16-week period. And our community partners are the Comox Valley Healthy Families, the Mikisew Métis Association, the Upper Island Women of Native Ancestry, and the Cumberland Community School Society. And although the Wednesday season is done, the coupon program does continue until the 20th of December. So once we have completed the program, we'll be able to have a better idea of the numbers, including the number of individuals and families receiving coupons from the town of Comox. So we're currently just waiting for all the numbers to come in. So let's take a quick look at the 2025 season. So before the season even started, we went and distributed over 80 informational flyers to residents in the immediate area of the market location. We talked to several property owners, including ones that had the backyards facing the field that we were in. Everyone that we talked to had a positive response to the market. We even had one of the backyard neighbors attend the market, and they were very grateful that we were there. So let's take a deep dive into the stats of the season. I just want to preface this by saying that although the Comox Valley Farmers Market has our vendors through the Comox Valley Regional District and the Strathcona Regional District, we did try to prioritize vendors, individuals, groups from the town of Comox whenever possible. So the breakdown is we had 10 market days from June 25th to August 27th, and we ran from 3 till 6 p.m. We had 31 different vendors that attended throughout the season. 7 vendors either resided in or ran a business in the town of Comox, or they leased land or operate a business in the town of Comox, but did not actually reside in the town of Comox. On average, we had 17 vendors per market. The most we had was 21, and the fewest was 15. We were able to receive sponsorship funds through the cooperators here in Comox that allowed us to have musicians for the last 3 markets of the season. 2 out of our 3 musicians came from the town of Comox, and in fact, the 2 that did come from Comox lived only blocks away from the market. But it's pretty convenient for them to pop down. We had 7 different community tables: Lush Valley Food Action Society, the Comox Fire Rescue, Comox Valley Community Foundation, Pop-Up Podcasts, the BC Shellfish Growers Association, Elder College, and Experience Comox Valley. We had a large variety of products, everything from arugula to zucchini and everything in between. We had a kids activity table 8 out of the 10 weeks that we were there. And this focused on food literacy, tasting, planting a garden, scavenger hunts, treasure hunts, recycled material projects, and so much more. We had approximately 500 customers per market day on average. The highest daily count was 861. The highest amount of shoppers was 130 in a 20-minute period. And that 20-minute period represents the counting that we do, and then we're able to calculate from there. The quietest period was 36 shoppers in a 20-minute period, and on average, the number of shoppers was 56 shoppers at any one time. Not listed here, back up a little bit, not listed here are volunteers. We had 2 volunteers, of which one was from the town of Comox. So what does this all mean in the grand scheme of things? So in 2023, the BC Association of Farmers Markets conducted a province-wide study of 70 markets of all types and sizes to measure the economic and community benefit from the farmers markets to BC neighborhoods, cities, towns, and agricultural sectors. And although we're not able to complete this scale of economic impact that was done in 2023, we are able, however, to use our gross sales data that we collect weekly to estimate the minimum economic impact that the Wednesday market had on the town of Comox. So at an approximate $84,820 in gross sales, that was recorded by vendors throughout the summer, and the gross sales are the direct sales from vendor to customer. Using a similar multiplier that was used in 2023 of 1.5 to measure the revenues and account for the ripple effect, we're able to calculate the approximate economic impact of $127,500. Now, this calculation means that the Comox Valley Farmers Market, in particular the Wednesday market, contributed $127,000 to the local economy in its first year. These monies benefit not only the farmer vendors, or the market vendors, sorry, but are also the local businesses that supplies to the vendors. The estimate does not take into account seasonal variability. It doesn't take into account other factors used in 2023. It does not include the spillover effect of individuals shopping or attending other businesses or events in the area before or after their trip to the market. So we estimate if we were able to conduct a full economic assessment, the impact would be closer to $200,000 to $250,000 in its first year. So as we grow the Wednesday market, we expect that the economic impact will also grow. So for the first year, this is a great start. So what is the plan for 2026? We are currently have surveys out to our customers and our vendors to get an idea of what worked and what didn't work in 2025 so that we can improve upon our 2026 season. So we're still working through these final details, but we have some initial thoughts. We'd like to extend the season from the end of June into mid-September. We'd like to modify the hours. We're thinking 3:30 to 6:30. We know that the sewer conveyance project made it harder for individuals who worked from 5:30 to 6 to get to the market before it closed. Hopefully, any traffic delays with respect to this project will be done by the time the market starts. And with the extension of our hours, that would mean that more people will be able to attend the market on their way home from work. We're going to increase the number and diversity of vendors and products. We're going to add musicians. We're looking for additional sponsorship for 2026 so that we can have musicians all season. We're going to continue with our community table and our kids activity table. We're looking into the possibility of getting a concession vendor that can be there for longer periods of time as it is over dinner. And we're looking at adding events such as Food Fest, which we've added at our other markets and it's been a great success. It's a partnership with the North Vancouver Island Culinary Association and it brings the chefs in to cook local in-season food. So that's kind of the rough plan that we're thinking for 2026. It will, of course, evolve as we get more information in. Before I conclude this presentation, I wanted to say that we're grateful to the Town of Comox, Mayor and Council, and town staff for their support of this market. We also want to give a big shout out to Ted, Community Center staff, and Corrine for all their help along the way. Village Park Field at the Community Center is a perfect location for the market. And we're so looking forward to continuing this relationship and to another amazing season in 2026. That's
Thank you
it.
so much. And I'll just see if anyone has any questions. You gave really nice thank yous there, but we want to thank the farmers market. We've wanted a market in Comox for many years. So it's really nice to see that the first year had quite a few successes. So thank you. And thanks to cooperators in the rec center, which you've already said. So was there more vendors that could fill in if there was kind of like that 15 to 18? There's some capacity to have more vendors you mentioned?
Yeah, there definitely is some capacity to have more vendors. I think because we were still in the planning stages and trying to figure things out, other vendors were not able to make it work with their schedules. But now that we're able to confirm what we're doing, we can put that into the schedule in January when we do our applications, giving more vendors the opportunity to plan their season, including the Wednesday market.
Yeah, and people might, now that they've seen it, be a little
Yeah.
more confident. That's good.
It's a little, when people were at Wednesday markets before and maybe it didn't go as well, they were unsure, so they didn't want to take that risk. But now that they've seen what has happened and the successes that other vendors have had, I think that they will most likely be able to attend again.
Glad you're back in 2026. Questions from council for Tyler? Okay, got one flashing light, but I don't think it's a question. So you've answered all our questions. Thank you again so much.
No worries.
We're so excited to have the farmers market and it's great to see those numbers. Those are some big numbers for first year and knowing that we had the conveyance project. So
Awesome. Thank you very much.
thank you. Our next delegation is with the Comox VIA. I believe we have Stuart, and possibly Barb or Stuart. Welcome, Stuart. So we're just here to discuss the invitation to council to discuss a local tourism function. Welcome, Stuart, and the whole crew here. Nice
Okay.
to see you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Minions and council and staff for having us here today to talk about this Comox-led Tourism Commission service. I'd like to recognize Councillor Blacklock as our BIA liaison, and also in attendance tonight in support, a number of board members, and also Linda Trevor from the Philberg, and Barb's here in person, if not with me, from the Blackfin. Sue and John Mann from our BIA event coordinators, Kurt and Blythe are here as well from Tidal Cafe, and a few others send their regrets because they're unwell that season or away on vacation. Also wanted to recognize Laura Greasley, our Executive Director, for putting together this presentation for us tonight. And she'll also be able to help with some questions and answers afterwards if that comes up. So we wanted to put together a fact-based and data-based practical approach to local tourism, which is similar to other communities across BC. Our vision for tourism in Comox aims to answer these questions. What does tourism look like in Comox? You know, what fits our values? Where are our strengths? And how can we collaborate locally and regionally for our success? So from hearing from the community, with the community survey as part of the town economic development strategy, what comes up in the top 3 here is marketing the town. So we can see that that's really important in that survey. So what is tourism in Comox? Tourism is not just a place to stay, although we do have that. It's also accommodations, attractions, transportation, food and beverage, arts and culture, outdoor recreation, retail, tourism-based, and events, which we have many of that are very excellent, including the farmers market, conferences, and many more things like industry and job creation, which can constitute quite a lot of our local economy. Here's some quick statistics showing that tourism really does exist in Comox, maybe more than you already realize. Between the job creation, you can see the numbers there, as well as 2.1% of all of Comox's exports. It's substantial already. And I think it's a real point to build from. Some specific highlights for tourism in Comox. Here, just looking at the marina alone, for example, between fishing and tours, the 4 marinas with Big Animal Encounters, Compass Adventure, who obviously we represent, if you don't know, and Harbor Air, there's over 50 employees just behind us here in the marina. And if we're also to look at things like the Blackfin with Barb, they've got 55 staff as well. And there's other portions on here that you may not have seen as well, which, many calls for transient moorage. If you look at the Philburg Heritage Lodge Park, with Linda, there are over 1,000 visits weekly and 15,500 over the Philburg Festival weekend alone. And if we look at Big Animal Encounters, between Campbell River and Comox, it's 5,400 passengers. All, 85% of them are international guests and 16 staff. And in Compass Adventure, this is our 30th year here in Valley, and we have over 8,000 student visits now. And between regattas and our employees, we have 20 plus staff. And we're launching a new catamaran project, which will service tours for tourists going forward. Obviously, we have the airport as well as Harbor Air and accommodation. Look at Airbnbs and VRBOs. We have 34 to 50 of those. Plus, we have obviously the motel, which is for sale. What opportunities could we see there going forward? We think that tourism really does matter to our residents. There's many residents that live here now that fell in love with Comox, like we all have, as a tourist, once they found us. How else do the residents benefit from tourism? Well, besides boosting the local economy, creating jobs, we also see an enhancement in amenities in many communities. And the marina is a great example of that, seeing all the amenities enhancement over those years. I've seen a lot of change for 30 years down in the marina, that's for sure. So what sets Comox apart? We believe it's the marine-based adventure experiences that we already offer and that can be expanded upon, as you can see on the list there. But also our parks and trails. And all of that is supported by our amazing food and beverage experiences, our great downtown shopping, and wellness support businesses as well. That's just a start. Why would we want to manage tourism locally? Well, we believe at the BIA that that would be because of accountability, transparency, and alignment with Comox's unique identity and attributes such as marketing, marine adventures, parks and trails, and all the support we talked about with food and beverage and the downtown. And that approach really aligns with council's priorities that we've seen and our plans. So some proof of concept with the BIA. Examples of the town and the BIA, destination and marketing already, and developing initiatives together. You know, there's a great list here of success that with the BIA utilizing a collaborative approach, both locally and regionally. If you look at on the list here, we have Seize a Day campaign, which had contests and was well received to the community, and that went into our summer campaign. We also had Summerfest and all these events that are listed, as well as some small projects like the quick pivot of having the trolley in town. And hopefully everyone brought smiles, and we got to definitely shout out to the town for helping collaborate with so many different aspects of that project that we moved very quickly on, and we believe was successful at a time when things were challenging in Comox with the road works this summer. So that's another strength for the BIA is definitely being able to pivot quickly and work with the town on collaborating on these types of projects. One of the other projects that we really loved, especially this time of the year, was the Lighting the Alley project and the small parks. Those were another key aspect of making that real downtown quaint feel that everyone loves when they get here. As we mentioned, like BIA can also pivot quite quickly to the community's needs. And we did that through a collaborative approach with initiatives like you can see here. This pay-to-play model helps us choose Comox first while still working together with the greater community. Now, although we aim to do something special for Comox, we are following a proven plan structure. As in many other destination marketing organizations in BC, there's 65 plus destination organizations in BC that would operate similar to what we're suggesting. Many of which are smaller than Comox and also operate with a smaller budget than what is proposed. As to budgeting, we believe as a group of entrepreneurs and business professionals, we will utilize our strengths to leverage our connections and work collaboratively. This enables us to do a lot with a little, and we've proven that with initiatives that we've already encountered and had success with, working with the town, working regionally. Adding to that, the option to quickly pivot to the needs of the community, we believe this will be a key factor to the success of Comox tourism. Now, just because there may be a small budget, it doesn't mean that we're not into leveraging that funding. And these are some examples of areas that we can do and have been utilized by community groups already. This is just the start. I'm sure there'll be questions and answers after this, hopefully. So what are some next steps here? We don't really need to have the funding immediately to start action. We just need to have the framework and approvals in place from council so that we can proceed and move ahead. And there may be some delays with the funding because of a 1-year period that may have to happen. At that time, we'll be ready for action. As a BIA, we feel confident that we have the right group of people, expertise, the experience to succeed with this initiative. This is an opportunity and we believe a catalyst for Comox to create its own tourism identity, serving our values while also working collaboratively to put Comox more prominently on the tourism map. On behalf of the BIA, and we'd like to thank you for offering us the opportunity to speak about our perspective tonight, and we're certainly welcome any questions they may have.
Great. Thank you, Stuart. The presentation was really thorough and helpful for us to know what the request is kind of for that trial 1 year and 5-year tactical plan.
Yeah.
I just want to speak on behalf of council. We have a really great working relationship with the Comox PA. That is kind of a working relationship where everyone has their hands in and works together. But I really want to speak to the professionalism and the communication and how great it's been for all of council to work with the entire board and Lara. So thank you very much for that ongoing, basically working relationship that we have. It's made these conversations and opportunities a lot more exciting for us. So thank you for that. And the presentation was really well done. So thank you. Councillor Swift, I believe your mic is on.
Yeah.
On? Oh, no. All right, I'll speak fast. Thanks for the presentation. It's really exciting to see some of the possibilities. My question is around the golf course. Do you see or have had any discussions with the golf course people to incorporate it into any kind of tourism scheme?
You just wait a moment. We're fixing the mic. Just want to make sure it's recorded properly. So, do you mind?
Okay. Thanks for that question, Councillor Swift. We have had a couple of different opportunities and examples of collaboration with the golf course. Most recent one was we did the Shells and Suds pub crawl with the trolley recently, and they were one of our host venues where at the venue we had a shellfish producer there shucking oysters, and people made their way around to the golf course and to other venues. So that's an example of that. We've held some of our workshops and events there, and we've included them in some of our strategic planning as well. So there are a couple of instances of that. The most recent was the fun project with the pub crawl.
Okay, other questions? We have Councillor Hazlitt.
Thanks very much. Just wondering, are there any things that the BIA is already doing for the downtown that were also being done through 4BI that you guys are already really doing the work that they're potentially getting ready to offer up? Or
Yeah. I'm just looking at the slide that's on. You can go.
So the question, Councillor Hazlitt, was around what is 4VI doing that we are doing as well? Yeah, is that your question?
Yeah.
So certainly we're, we have our website, our social media channels, membership, online listings and so on, and they are maintaining their own online listings for businesses within the tourism sector. We have an events calendar, they have an events calendar. So there are things along those lines. We are certainly also working with businesses from a professional development or business development perspective. And the trolley campaign and that Seize the Summer campaign was a great example where we went not only for our downtown businesses to profile them, but the stops included businesses throughout Comox and destination hubs, if you will, around Comox. So it was broader than that.
One other thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think also the portion about the community businesses with the learning opportunities was something that I took advantage of for sure. And I feel like that's something that would really benefited the members as well. It's a crossover. Yeah.
yep, that's great. Thank you very much. Got
Thank
one,
you.
but Ken's finger hot and ready. Another one of the questions I have is, in the event that we were to move this over to more of a Comox focused tourism board, away from a regional approach, would we be competing pretty heavily for grant applications with the region? And, or would it be, a little bit more of, here's a pretty good idea that you guys have got to offer. We're gonna find you both. It's not hard to go.
Well, certainly, we are all aware of some of the municipal grants that the town has gone after for municipal infrastructure. Courtney submits for their own infrastructure needs, so certainly that occurs just as it's a kind of nature of the beast. But in other instances, you have the opportunity to showcase and go after a project that is very unique and distinct to Comox and has a very specific value and reason for being. So I can see opportunities for that, but I also, the board envisions that we can also continue to collaborate on projects that make sense, that might be a more regional benefit. So we can kind of see the different avenues there. But what has been lacking is that we haven't gone after tourism grants specifically to what the town needs, or the tourism industry feels is needed. That being said, something like the marina building, the new marina services building, and that's an incredible new asset that came in because of the work of the town. But we would certainly want to continue to go after grants. And in instances, there might be collaboration, and in instances, it's a standalone effort.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Grant.
Thanks. So I got a couple of questions. Number one is, if we were to give you $60,000, or that would be the budget, how much do you think you could parlay that into for an annual budget? Could you get 100 grand, say?
Yeah, so I think there's two portions to that question for an answer. One would be, what can we do with $60,000? And there's only so much time in the presentation to go over that. But I think that's the portion where us as business owners and professionals and the way that we work our businesses now, we've proven that we can do a lot more with a little than in other situations, perhaps, where there's limitations for where we can go. I think that's a big portion to that. The $60,000 can go a long way. When it comes to our budget there, that's $100,000 budget there, showing without a whole lot of reaching out for grants. So that would be amazing. So what we've done so far, acting in these roles, is within our existing budget, right? So I think that's already been successful. And like Councilor Bartlett was mentioning, there's also some crossover already. So we can only imagine what $100,000 would do. It doesn't sound like a lot of money in a ground scale, but that would be in a regional approach. When we're looking at Comox only, with collaboration, I think that we can do a lot with $100,000. So, yeah.
My other question would be, so would this be a BIA-led thing, or would you have a tourism board that would sort of take this on, which would be maybe more inclusive of all of Comox rather than just the downtown?
Yeah, absolutely. So, sorry, again, that was probably in the presentation as well, but this would be an all of Comox approach. We recognize that it is important for all of Comox. I mean, even just our last presentation, we think that things like those events with the farmers market would be important to this initiative, and that's outside of the Comox downtown. So again, all of Comox would have to be included. And as a part of, maybe you can speak to structure that we were envisioning. It would be a board.
Yes, in an ideal world, and the common best practices for it to be a tourism commission or tourism committee, and that is comprised of a town-wide sector-based approach based on all of the sort of key sectors that our community offers, and making sure that there's representation there. The BIA in an ideal world would have one of the seats at that table, and would be managing that structure and facilitating that, but they would have just simply a seat at that table and have representation from other important sectors throughout the town.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And can I just clarify, I think it was here, year one is the 100,000 budget with kind of 55 to 65,000 from council and a 5-year tactical plan, but it really would be monetary wise, a 1-year plan and then kind of a reevaluate. It's not a the 5-year tactical plan isn't a guarantee of what year 2 to 5 looks like.
That's right. So a 1-year plan would be based on probably on $100,000 budget, which would be 60 from the town, 20 from the BIA, 10 from grants, 10 from sponsorship. And then we would be looking at developing a 5-year longer term plan, which is an important tactic just in terms of establishing your long-term vision and plans and where do we want to go. But it also is a requirement of the municipal hotel tax. It's something that they require to do. So it just is good practice to be getting into that framework and approach as to how you run your tourism.
Perfect. It's nice to have that kind of scope of
Mhm.
it's a year, but we would be rediscussing after, although I have no doubt in the success of it. Councillor Haslett?
Thanks. I'm just wondering, over the course of the last little while, there's been quite a few different, downtown action plan, economic development strategies, or plan for the marina. The BIA has done a fair amount of work on your own, as well as the chamber's done some pretty big survey questions out to the business community. I'm wondering if this were to go ahead and you were to move forward with this, how long would it take to get more of a pointed approach or strategy rather than having to do a bunch of surveys as to what you think the best course of the tourism money would be spent?
Okay. You're absolutely right. There has been a robust amount of survey work that's been done. The BIA did it to develop our 5-year strategic plan through the economic development strategy, the downtown action plan. We have all of the data, we have all of the information, and we have all of what is needed to do a plan in a very nimble and quick and strategic manner. So we don't need to do more in that regard. We have what we need to go. So because of all of that good work and recent work.
Yeah, I think if I was to add to that, I feel like this is another reason why it's so timely that this opportunity is coming up, is that all of this work is already done. We have the information, and now let's do something with it. And let's do something that's Comox led. It's kind of.
Councillor Grant?
Yeah, just in listening to what you guys are saying, you're really hitting on a lot of the things that I think have been missing for some time now. And I think that your plan actually makes a lot of sense to me. We're not a big community, but we've got a lot of good stuff that people could be taking advantage of. And I, for one, think this is a pretty good plan. So thank you for bringing this.
Appreciate that.
Okay, it looks like that's all the questions for this evening. So we'll be coming back to our agenda on the December 3rd meeting. And I know that's tight with January 2026, but we will do a follow-up on the delegation at that time. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone from the Comox BIA for attending. That is all of our delegations this evening. So you are welcome to stay or to depart. We'll just take a 30-second pause. Okay, we're going to continue. We have adoption of the meeting minutes for Wednesday, November 5th for adoption. Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on the November 5th regular council meeting minutes? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. We are on page 15, the Nautical Days Committee meeting minutes for October 29th, 2025 for receipt. The seconder. Thank you. Any questions or comments on the Nautical Days Committee meeting minutes? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. We are on page 17, the Strategic Planning Committee meeting minutes for November 12th, 2025 for receipt. Any questions or comments on the strategic planning committee meeting minutes? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. We are on page 18, the consent agenda. If I can get a motion to receive the one consent agenda item. All those in favor of receipt? Opposed? And that passes. And are there any items for discussion? Okay. I think that's coming up in another item also later on in the agenda. We are on unfinished business. Back to page 5. We have the delegation from November 5th from Mike Atkins, CEO of the Comox Valley Airport Commission, discussing the temporary parking at 1200 Military Row. They are asking for approval to move forward with their temporary parking plans, which they presented at our last regular council meeting. Is there any discussion items around the unfinished business there?
Can I move that we grant them the temporary parking plan?
CAO Wall would like to speak first, so we'll go over to CAO Wall.
Thank you. So what the airport is asking for is a temporary use permit, which is a zoning decision. Once the new zoning bylaws or once the new OCP is in and zoning bylaws, they'll be able to apply for a TUP. So it's not granted to them today, but we are anticipating bringing this probably as first temporary use permit.
Should we be deferring it till January 2026 and just keeping it on the agenda, or it will naturally come back, or we will make sure they know to do temporary use permit requests?
They are aware that a temporary use permit is required and a new application will come in. So there's no need to continue this in unfinished business.
Great, and we don't need to receive it. It's just unfinished business there for our information. Councillor Haslett.
Did they not say in the presentation that they're looking to have this for the beginning of December to start construction so that they could have the parking in place for everybody going down at Christmas to multiple?
So the
Sunnier places.
airport, so you're not able to make any decisions on this because it's going to be a zoning decision and you can't fetter your ability in zoning decisions. Having said that, the airport is able to take the risk and make the investment and start doing the work in the hopes that you approve their TUP. That is a risk that they can take, and there's nothing you can do to sort of guarantee that you are going to give them the TUP when applied.
Read between the lines on that, okay. But we're not able to with the zoning bylaws coming out. Okay, any other questions around that? Because they were requesting for December, that's correct.
Nothing for us to do currently. Doing nothing is the only thing.
Okay. We have no special reports for bylaw adoptions on page 19. We have the solid waste fees amendment for 2026. That fees and charges amendment bylaw number 2016.10 be adopted.
Okay.
Any questions or comments on the solid waste fees amendment schedules? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Under new business on page 24, we have traffic complaints that council defer all traffic related requests outlined in Schedule A to C of the November 19th, 2025 traffic complaints report, and further that council direct administration to review these items as part of the next transportation master plan, which is scheduled for 2028. Moved and seconded. Is there any questions about that report provided and the traffic safety, traffic calming plans that were provided? Councillor Blacklock.
I think the key thing in this is, we read the citizens' letters, we read the traffic complaint letters, we go to the intersections where these complaints come in, and at times, parts of us and certainly some of us may agree with the letter writer and say, there might be something to look at here. But as counselors, it's imperative that we listen to the engineers who have the expertise in traffic management. And I think this report is very well written. I would commend the engineering staff for putting it together. And it clearly indicates for a lot of these issues, there may be a perception of non-safety. When you start looking at the data and what should be done, and you listen to the opinions of the experts, I'm going to defer to the engineers every time. So on this one, I would understand, if it was my intersection by my house, or a crosswalk that I wanted to see. I wouldn't be happy to hear that we're gonna delay things and look at it again in 2028, but I think that's the way to go. So I would speak in favor of the motion.
Thank you. 2028 sounds very far away, but it's not so far away. Couple more years. Is there any other questions or comments on? Has the motion been made and seconded? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any questions or comments on deferring to the master plan 2028? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you to engineering for that report to us through CEO Wall. We are on page 75. We have zoning bylaw number 2056, and there is a presentation available this evening. Looks like we'll be joined online. So we'll just get that presentation set up and then we'll be going into the bylaw. Welcome to Brittany with Urban Systems presenting zoning bylaw number 2056.
Good evening, Council, Mayor and Council. My colleague Kara Gross should also be in the waiting room if she can be admitted as well, please.
We don't have Kara.
Okay.
Oh, there she is.
Just being added now. Thank you.
Okay, Kara, we are ready for you to kick us off.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Kara Gross, and I'm joining you tonight alongside my colleague Brittany Tuttle to present zoning bylaw number 2056 and the associated zoning map for first and second reading. I will be starting off this presentation with a brief refresher regarding the overall objectives of this bylaw update, as well as an overview of past and upcoming opportunities for engagement. I will then note some of the items requiring Council's direction this evening before we delve into a high-level summary of the key changes that were made. Next slide, please. Before we get too far into the details of the proposed zoning bylaw, it's important to note why the town has been undertaking a comprehensive review and update of its zoning bylaw in the first place. So through this bylaw review and update process, we've been provided the opportunity to improve alignment with the town's concurrent OCP update process. In some instances, this has meant aligning zoning very closely with the land use designations in the OCP, while in other instances, it has meant specifically not aligning zoning with the land use designations in the OCP. And then where possible, we've also ensured that zoning regulations complement policies found in the OCP. Second, this update provided an opportunity to modernize regulations to reflect best practices, which included updating, simplifying, and clarifying things like definitions, general and use-specific regulations, parking requirements, landscaping requirements, and the zones according to the unique needs of Comox. This update also allowed us to address land use challenges that the community and staff have identified since the bylaw was first adopted in 2017, including consolidation of the 50+ amendments and 330 or so pages of the bylaw to create a more accessible document. Finally, this update serves to ensure that the town remains in compliance with recent provincial legislation by pre-zoning for 20 years of housing need. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. So the zoning bylaw review was first introduced to the community at the OCP open house event that occurred on June 24th this year. And although the event focused primarily on the draft OCP land use map, many attendees were able to engage with the boards we had for the zoning bylaw update as well. And they voiced support for a modernized and simplified approach to zoning and really appreciated the opportunity to better understand the relationship between OCPs and zoning bylaws. Additional opportunities for residents to participate in this process include online review of the proposed zoning bylaw and zoning map, as well as participation in the public hearing that will be held later on in the bylaw adoption process. Next slide, please. Before I pass things off to Brittany, I want to quickly note the items requiring council's direction this evening. Next slide. So the first is whether council accepts the proposed zoning bylaw approach we are discussing in this presentation. And the second is whether council would like to require no build covenants for the purpose of future road dedication and or tree protection and landscape buffer zones for the pre-zoned multifamily lots. And I'll now hand things over to Brittany.
Awesome. So moving on to the next segment of our presentation, we'll be providing an overview to Mayor and Council this evening of the key changes proposed for the new bylaw. This is important to note that what was summarized in the council report, as well as what we'll be sharing with you through this presentation, is not an exhaustive list of all the changes that were made to the bylaw. We're just highlighting some of those key changes that are some of the bigger moves for the bylaw. So first thing that we're going to discuss this evening is the new bylaw format. Assuming everyone has had a chance to skim through the new zoning bylaw included in the attachments, you'll have noticed that there's an entirely new template that has applied. And this new format aims to create a more interactive experience for the user, as well as improve enforcement and administration of the bylaw by both staff and the public. The most notable feature of this new template is that all of the regulations are largely embedded within tables. And this allows for ease of comparison between the regulations to, again, better ensure that the bylaw is being administered properly and considered as a whole rather than section by section. So this will aim to reduce the likelihood that a regulation is missed. So going to the next slide. There's an example here that shows a section of the existing zoning bylaw on the left, and then what those regulations look like in the new template on the right. And so as you can see, the information has been rather simplified for this new table format. In addition, something I'd like to point out quickly is that you'll see on the example on the right-hand side of the screen there's some text that's in a light blue color, for example, exterior side. And so that is a defined term in the bylaw, and all the defined terms in the bylaw are this light blue color because they are hyperlinked. So you can click on the defined term and it will link you directly back to the definition in the definition section earlier in the bylaw. Okay, so moving into some of the updated zoning provisions, I'm going to go over some of these zoning provisions which live within sections 5 and 6 of the zoning bylaw, the general regulations and some of the use-specific regulations. And then we'll be chatting about some of the more specific actual zone regulations. So the first one is related to road dedication setbacks. So we've included a new section in the bylaw under section 5 to prevent construction within areas adjacent to a roadway that the town plans to expand in the future. And it's important to note that this requirement does not apply to existing development. It only applies to new development. So moving on to the next slide, please. Included within the use-specific regulations, which is section 6 of the bylaw, we have added in requirements for the inclusion of private or shared amenity spaces in new residential developments. And so private amenity space includes space like a deck or a yard. It's intended for use by the occupant of an individual unit, whereas a shared amenity space is meant to be used by all residents of a development. And so these spaces could be outdoor or indoor, as shown on the table here. And an example of a shared outdoor space could be something like a rooftop patio, or a shared indoor space could be something like a multi-purpose room that's included within a large apartment building. And so also, as you can see on the slide, these requirements are broken down by the number of units that are proposed for the development. So the larger the development that's being proposed, the more amenity space that needs to be provided. And these requirements are outlined in the bylaw as a minimum floor space per unit. So for example, 10 square meters of GFA dedicated to amenity space per dwelling unit. Okay, next slide, please. The home occupation regulations that are included in section 6 are a little bit different than what the existing bylaw had outlined. These are now in the form of a tiered structure to allow for greater flexibility in the types of home occupations that are permitted within the town. And this structure aims to recognize that different home occupations might be suitable under different contexts in the town. And so I'll show you what these tiers look like on the next slide. But before we get to that, I just wanted to mention that in addition to the tiered system, the regulations for home occupations as a whole have been updated to clarify a few other items, such as the amount of space that a home occupation can occupy, how many parking spaces are required, how many non-resident employees can work there, how many visitors could be permitted on the property, as well as uses that the town will be prohibiting, so will not be considering as a type of home occupation. So on the next slide here, we have a table that outlines those tiers that I mentioned. And so there's three tiered categories of home occupations that are being proposed, and they are minor, major, and accommodation. And you can see that accommodation there is broken into two sort of sub-tiered categories. I'll let you read the definitions of each on your own. They were included in the council report as well. But the key difference to highlight between the minor and major home occupation types is that a major home occupation allows for a non-resident employee. And then in terms of the bed and breakfast and the vacation rental, so those two accommodation home occupation types, the big difference here is that the vacation rental must comply with provincial short-term rental regulations, and it can operate in a secondary residential unit like a suite or a coach house, versus the bed and breakfast can only operate within the principal residence. All right, next slide, please. So in an effort to better encourage provision of childcare facilities, acknowledging that childcare can be very difficult to find for families in the community, we have permitted childcare uses more broadly in almost all of the zones in the bylaw. Childcare facilities are already subject to a licensing process by Island Health Authority. And so this approach in the bylaw places the onus back on the health authority to determine how and where a facility may actually exist in the community. So it's relieving a bit of pressure from staff. Next slide, please. So on the topic of mobile vending, earlier this month on November 5th, council had provided direction to staff to add mobile vending as a permitted use in the bylaw in zones where commercial uses are permitted. And mobile vending, just for clarity, is defined in the bylaw as the sale of goods or services from a movable apparatus. So that's something like a food truck or a cart, for example. And so we proceeded with the direction provided by council by permitting this use in most of the mixed use employment, marine and public and park and public use zones. Further regulations related to mobile vending are recommended to be addressed in the business license bylaw through a future amendment process. On the topic of modular homes, the new bylaw is silent on modular homes, and this varies in approach from the existing zoning bylaw. So the new bylaw doesn't outline any restrictions or limitations on modular forms of construction, and this is to allow for some flexibility for that type of construction in COMOCs. And something important to note here is that modular forms of construction, just like all other forms of construction, must still be compliant with the building code and any other applicable standards. Next slide, thank you. So here we're chatting about subdivision standards for small scale multi-unit housing lots. And something that was included in the bylaw to address this was reducing the existing minimum lot size and lot width that's required for any of those SHMU applicable parcels within the new SHMU zone. And this was done in an effort to better accommodate single lot subdivisions as a way of providing more infill forms of housing. And this aligns with previous conversations that have been had between staff and council on this topic. Okay, so getting into landscaping, you'll have likely noticed that there is an entire section in the bylaw, section 7, that's dedicated to landscaping. And this section is quite robust. There are a number of requirements that have been added to the landscaping section of the bylaw, and this is to achieve two sort of overarching objectives. The first one being enhancing the town's existing tree canopy, and the second one being is ensuring that new development is complementary to existing neighborhood character, particularly in cases where there's going to be more infill development occurring in existing neighborhoods. And so these landscaping regulations are meant to be sort of the baseline of what is required for landscaping in the new development. And then there may be some properties where official community plan development permit area guidelines apply as well, in addition to the bylaw requirements. And so those DPA guidelines could be requiring further landscaping requirements that are above it and beyond what the zoning bylaw requires in this section. And lastly, before I turn it back over to Kara here to get into some of the changes made to the zones, I'm going to provide an overview about section 8, which is the parking and loading section of the bylaw. And so we've made multiple efforts to really simplify this section of the bylaw on numerous fronts. So the first one being reducing the minimum parking requirements for many of the uses. And this is to establish greater consistency and also just better align with the need for parking for those types of uses. We have also allowed for a further reduction of the amount of parking that's required for non-residential uses within downtown Comox. So there is a 50% parking reduction that is granted to any of those non-residential uses within a defined area of downtown that's included within the bylaw. There's a figure in there that shows this applicable area. We have also clarified specific requirements for things like barrier-free, accessible parking, as well as visitor parking standards. And we have also introduced some new parking requirements in the bylaw, such as those related to short and long-term bicycle parking and end-of-trip facility requirements. And so end-of-trip facility requirements are things like showers and storage lockers related to active transportation modes. And those are now being required for large-scale commercial and institutional development. Okay, I'll turn it back over to Kara to give us an overview of the zones.
Thanks, Brittany. So in addition to the broader regulatory changes that Brittany just described, a significant part of the zoning bylaw update was to review, consolidate, and recategorize the current zones to better reflect existing uses and minimize redundancies, as well as improve alignment with the new OCP land use map. Across all zones, efforts were made to consolidate zones that were similar or had very similar permitted uses, minimum setbacks that were the same, similar height or lot coverage maximums, etc. And so as we go through each zone category, you'll see that consolidation is the real theme here. But as a result, the total number of zones has been reduced from 65 to 49, as summarized in this table here on screen. And you'll note that the largest category is the comprehensive development zones, and which have actually increased. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. But it is important to note that a large portion of the overall zones are made up of the comprehensive development zones, which are applicable to individual lots. So these new zoning categories are reflected here on this simplified version of the proposed zoning map. This is not the zoning map that is attached to the bylaw, but this is just shows you sort of where those categories exist throughout Comox. Next slide, please. So for the low density residential zones, there were 9 existing zones, and these have been consolidated into just 4 because there were a lot of redundancies within the existing zones. The new small scale multi-unit residential zone, which is your SMU zone, it aligns with the ground oriented OCP land use designation, whereas the other three zones they align with the detached residential OCP land use designation. And so this is like I said, a nice way to see the low density zone sort of just as 4, doesn't need to be 9 anymore. And again, this is just the theme of tonight, it's consolidating zones. So as with the low density residential zones, consolidated the 13 existing multi-unit zones down to just 3. They have a little bit more nuance to them because we have come to council to seek direction regarding pre-zoning. And so you'll note that the new ground-oriented residential, or the MR1 zone, which aligns with the ground-oriented residential OCP land use designation, it includes the lots that were endorsed by council for ground-oriented multi-unit pre-zoning at the August 13th, 2025 meeting of council. Whereas the other 2, the low-rise and mid-rise residential zones, MR2 and MR3, they include the 4 properties that council directed staff to pre-zone for additional residential density at the meeting on October 22nd, 2025, just very recently. So we have 3 properties on the MR2 and just 1, the MR3. The existing mixed-use zones, which were previously categorized as commercial zones, now comprise their own mixed-use zone category for the purpose of clearly distinguishing the current and desired character of mixed-use development from other larger scale forms of commercial or residential-only development. And where there was the existing core commercial zone, it applied to parcels sort of all over Comox, so we broke it into 3 new zones that better capture the sort of distinct nature and scale of mixed-use development in different areas of the town. So this is, out on Anderton and Guthrie, or where interspersed within existing residential neighborhoods, etc. Next slide, please. So similarly, review of the bylaws 7 existing commercial zones and their 2 existing industrial zones identified pretty significant misalignment between existing regulations and the town's long-term vision for employment lands as established through the new OCP. And so to improve alignment, these zones have been consolidated and reorganized within their employment zones category for the purpose of clearly distinguishing larger scale commercial, service commercial, or even light industrial uses from smaller scale forms of commercial development that we sort of talked about just now in the mixed use zones. The next 3 zone categories should be pretty quick because they're pretty simple. There was 4 existing marine zones that were all pretty similar. They've been consolidated to 2. Next slide. Existing park and institutional zones have been reviewed and reorganized. And so now there are just 4 of them. And the special use zones category is a new zone category that takes sort of the floating zones, the ALR, agriculture zone, and the zone applicable to lands owned and operated by the Department of National Defense, including 19 Wing Comox and Comox Valley Airport are in this new special use zones category. Most of the zoning regulations applicable to those have not changed. And then finally, the comprehensive development zones. As I noted earlier, they actually went from 22 to 26. And this is because the zoning regulations applicable to those 22 existing and 4 recently adopted multi-unit residential and mixed-use zones have remained largely untouched. And this is just because we wanted to retain the site-specific zoning conditions and considerations that were made by council at the time of the zoning amendment. And so they remain until they are built out. And that's the zones. So as far as next steps go, following this evening, we will be completing any necessary revisions to the zoning bylaw and the zoning map. And then The zoning bylaw will be referred to the ALC for comment. Staff will be then scheduling a public hearing, and then there'll be final reading and adoption of the zoning bylaw by mid-December to hopefully achieve that December 31st, 2025 deadline from the province. And that leads us to our recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, we'll just get you to stay online in case there's any questions for Kara and Brittany, which there likely will be. Thanks for walking us through some of the highlights of the modernization of the zoning bylaws. That's a lot of information in there and quite a few changes. I'll just look for questions from council, and the public hearing is on the agenda tonight to be scheduled potentially for Wednesday, December 3rd. So questions from council on the bylaws. Councillor Blacklock.
I noticed in here, you had a slide with respect to requiring specific numbers of trees to be planted. Does that only apply to new construction, or is that for existing properties?
Through the chair, it only applies to new construction.
Okay, that's good. I just wanted to clarify that. And then with home occupations, how much of the regulation for home occupation is going to be included in, should be included in our business licensing, and how much should be done through zoning? This seems to be pretty prescriptive as far as the zoning is concerned. I'm just wondering, is there anything that should maybe be done in business licensing rather than through the zoning bylaw?
Through the chair, that question might be best answered by staff, as ourselves are not familiar with the town's existing business licensing bylaw. However, I anticipate that there may be some updates to the business licensing bylaw needed perhaps to better align with the new zoning regulations.
I'm just trying to make sure that we're not going to be responsible for the zoning compliance. I guess we are responsible for the zoning compliance. It's just, at what point are we policing the number of people who are working at every individual home occupation?
I think we'll step in, and that seems like it's a good planning or CAO wall question, or potentially a follow-up, but I'll send that question over to CAO wall.
I think the distinction really comes around wanting to keep your home occupation small. Council could make the change and say that a minor home business has an employee outside of the home that lives there, but the idea of a home-based business is meant to be that sole practitioner, somebody who's maybe doing accounting, maybe providing some music lessons, something like that. It's not meant to expand beyond there. That's where you get into the major uses. Also with this, we will have temporary use permits, which will allow people to approach council and say, hey, I've got a use that I'm proposing in my home. I'd like, a couple of years to get it off the ground. We're going to have 3 employees or whatever it may be. And you'll be able to take a look at that and decide if it fits within the residential care of the neighborhood.
Sure, I'm going to ask a quick question and then I'll come back to you. Okay. On page 11 of the presentation, under the amenity area requirements, there's kind of the categories of under 10, 10 to 50, and greater than 50, and then it specifies what type of amenity, including, it looks like as soon as you hit 10, there has to be a playground, community garden, or some sort of rooftop amenity. Are those kind of like best practice numbers, or where do those numbers come from for less than 10, 10 to 50, and 50 plus for amenities?
Through the chair, that's exactly correct. Those are numbers taken from a survey of what other amenity requirements are throughout the region, and even throughout British Columbia more broadly.
Okay, so that's kind of a British Columbia standard, and then obviously there can be different applications for variances depending on the need of the complex. Okay. I was just curious, I hadn't seen that before. I stole Councillor Blacklock's question. Okay. Councillor Swift, do you have a question? Okay. Other questions from council on the zoning bylaws before we go through some of those changes and the public hearing? Okay, thank you so much to Kara and Brittany online, and we will go into the recommendations now and the public hearing booking. CAO Wall has comments, but thanks for presenting to us this evening. CAO Wall.
Yeah, thank you, council. We noticed a small change that needs to be made in order to permit coach houses on lots that are 1,500 meters squared or larger. And so rather than the recommendation that you have in the report for number 1, I'd suggest that the following recommendation be put on the table. That council give first and second reading to zoning bylaw number 2056 as amended, that coach houses be permitted on lots that are 1,500 meters squared or larger in the draft R-CL zone, Cape Lazo residential zone.
Okay, I'll second. So just for clarification, there's 5 recommendations that we're going through, but we're going to do the amendment first.
Yes, so the first recommendation is for your zoning bylaws. This is the time to deal with that. Also, you drawing your attention to a request that you have in correspondence from the marina. Now would be the time to deal with that issue as well. Getting into the items below is registering covenants and scheduling of the public hearings, which are dependent on changes that are made in recommendation number 1.
Thank you. So we're on page 75 for zoning bylaw number 2056, and on number 1, CAO Wall just gave us an amended motion based on the Cape Lazo coach houses. So it's been moved and seconded, and then we will, just for clarification, the marina letter would go in now, not later.
If council wants to make changes to, if council wants to have discussion on the requested changes from the marina, now would be the time to have it.
Okay.
So are you thinking that we should do that? Should we vote on this one first and then bring that one up?
We can make a second amendment, correct?
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's fine.
You're correct. Making a second amendment now rather than voting what's on the table would be the best way to go about it.
Okay, so we'll vote on the amending motion, and then there can be another amending motion.
No, you only have, you have a singular motion on the table now, which includes the changes that staff have recommended to Cape Lazo. Now is the time to introduce any amendments regarding the marina, regarding other changes that you might want to see in the
Correct.
zoning bylaw.
We're gonna vote on the amendment though, and then
Yes.
that's, yeah, okay, crystal clear. So we can vote on this amendment, then we can have another amendment before we vote on the motion as amended. So the first amendment is as number 1 reads, but again with the Cape Lazo residential. So we're just voting on the amendment, on that Cape Lazo amendment.
Sorry, I know this is the motion with Cape Lazo was already on the table. That's already on there. So you need to make an amendment motion to that. It's only if you want to amend something else, including the marina.
Okay. So we would have to do that right now. Right now. Okay. Does council have any questions before we go forward with that discussion?
Are we bringing marina now?
You would make that as a motion, as a question, correct?
Well, there's wording here already, so. So I would move that we amend that Schedule A zoning map be amended to by expanding the boundary of M2 Marina Zone to include the South Marina expansion area as shown in attachment 1 of the correspondence titled Alan Gurnell, General Manager of Comox Valley Marina Limited, Marina Zoning Alignment, South Marina Expansion, and in the November 19th regular council agenda.
I'll second that. So for discussion, that we now have.
So now, since we did that, this would be subject to the public hearing as well. And so if the public has a problem with the marina piece, they could have their say either before or at that meeting, correct?
This would put it forth to the public hearing, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. So we had the updated motion by CAO Wall, which was first and seconded, and then the amendment with the Comox Marina expanding the M2 Marina zoning. So that is on the table. So any questions or comments before we vote on bylaw number 2056. Okay, all those in favor of the added amendment? Opposed? And that passes, and we will now be voting on the motion as amended. Are there any questions or comments on the motion as amended, which had the Marina M2 added based on correspondence, as well as the Cape Lazo coach houses above 1,500 meters or larger? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. And I apologize for the confusion.
I'll move 1A.
Thank you. That the zoning bylaw be referred to public hearing scheduled on December 3rd at 5 p.m. at council chambers. That's been moved, seconded. Any questions or comments on the public hearing? All those in favor? Opposed? And that's moved forward to public hearing 1A. Thank you. We are now on number 2, that prior to adoption of Comox zoning bylaw number 2056, a no-build covenant is registered on the title of 1890 Comox Avenue, identifying the future registration of a 3-meter wide sewer right-of-way or easement prior to construction occurring on the lot, which will facilitate a future service to 1873 Buena Vista Avenue from Comox Avenue.
Move.
That has been moved and seconded. And questions, we have Councillor Hazlitt and then Councillor Swift.
I just want to confirm with some of these no build covenants through staff that these conversations that have taken place with landowners and developers, and we're not just throwing these things in the last minute. I've read through these; they all make sense. I can understand why they're going in place. I just want to make sure that all parties are aware of it.
Through to CAOL.
Yeah, that's correct. We've had conversation with the developers and there hasn't been any major concerns. I'd say on number 2 specifically regarding 1890 Comox, there has been a level of concern raised about registering the no build covenant in the event that council doesn't ratify the zoning change that you've committed to. You've asked to you've asked for it to be pre-zoned. And so the idea that zoning gets changed before the process is done is a little bit uncomfortable, I think, for the developers or the owners at this time. However, I don't know a way around that right now. It doesn't seem like council's had any discussion around not fulfilling the pre-zoning requirement you've directed us to do. So my suggestion would be for us to just move forward. And if something changes, we'll figure out how to deal with it at that point. Just planning for all the different potential eventualities in this is going to slow it down, that I don't know how to square that circle.
Any follow-up? Councillor Haslett? That's good. Okay, Councillor Swift, did you have a question? We have some mic issues, so I apologize. Councillor Blacklock and then Councillor Grant.
Oh, no. My question is just, I assume these things will be registered on the title at town's expense? Or is this because we're going to be incurring legal fees on all of these?
I don't know who's paying for what.
Looks like Director Houle has an answer. If we can go through CAOL to Houle.
Through the chair to Councillor Blacklock. The covenants themselves have all been drafted at the town's expense, and registered on title at the town's expense. But when it comes to actually registering the actual right-of-ways or easements, then that'll be at the applicant's expense to get the surveying done and prepare those documents at that time.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, so we are on number 2 there. So are there any other questions or comments? That's on the no build covenant for 1890 Comox Avenue. All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. We have 3 more recommendations under this bylaw. Number 3, that prior to adoption of the bylaw, a no build covenant is registered on the title of 1490 Cambridge Road, identifying the future registration of the following road dedications, which are listed there. Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on the 1490 Cambridge Road no build covenant? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Number 4, we have that prior to adoption, a no-build covenant is registered on the title of 1000 Pritchard Road, identifying the future registration of the following road dedications prior to construction occurring on the lot, with 3 following dedications. Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Number 5, that prior to adoption of Comox zoning bylaw number 2056, a no-build covenant is registered on the title of 1603 Brighton Road, identifying the future registration of a 12-meter wide tree protection landscape buffer covenant area along the east property line to construction occurring on the lot. Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. And that gets us through the planning bylaw, which will go forward to public hearing on Wednesday, December 3rd at 5 p.m. Thank you for that. And thank you again to Brittany and Kara online. There are no new notices of motion. Under correspondence on page 280, we have correspondence from Bob Wells, Mayor, City of Courtenay, request for financial support for their temporary winter shelter at 971 Cumberland Road. For receipt?
Yeah. Someone could actually tell me how much money he's asking for. I can add that up to 600,000 or 30,000.
We have a number here. So let's move in second. It's been moved and seconded for discussion. And then CAO Wall has sent us some information at 5:07 in your emails. The first year of funding is at 31,752, and this would come from our affordable housing monies, most likely if it was approved. And there is a year 2 and year 3 number of 13,662 for a total 3-year commitment at 59,076. So what we'll do is vote on receipt, and then we'll look if there's any motions on sending 1, 2, or 3-year funding. So all those in favor of receipt? Opposed? And that passes. And I will move that we send year 1 funding and look for a follow-up on the future year's funding to see where things are at that time.
I'll second that.
So the motion is for the 31,752 to come from our affordable housing fund, and we would wait on year 2 and year 3. Questions or comments? I believe Councillor Hazlitt.
Yeah, I was just trying to. Sounds
31,752,000. Councillor Blacklock.
You know, this emergency weather shelter in Courtenay is of course the property at 971 Cumberland Road, which some of us old timers will remember as the OK Tire store, and most recently it was a thrift store. The property was purchased by the city of Courtenay, and I think at that time the town of Comox contributed to that capital acquisition. Is that correct?
We contributed 80,000 because they've changed the use in past, so we did a retrofit, and our percentages have been relatively minor, less than population size, but we did commit 80,000 in the last 2 years.
Okay, so and now we're being asked to cover a proportion of the renovation and operating costs for the emergency weather shelter in Courtenay. And we have also at the same time received an application for a temporary use permit, or we've been told there might be one coming for Comox for temporary.
We don't have one at this time, so.
I'm just concerned that we're gonna go and fund a temporary use permit in an adjacent community, using funds that might further be used to fund one in our own community. So I just, I'm happy to fund year 1 of this, and I'm happy to vote in favor because this is, it's going to take all hands on deck and a regional approach and all that. But I'm really curious to see how it goes for them in the year 1.
It's fair. I just want to, as context from meetings I've sat in previous years, not this year. I believe that's turning into a all winter shelter, which is why the extra funding is needed. So, and the reason for that is they haven't broken ground on Braidwood. So the hope is that within 2 or 3 years, there's a much larger shelter. But even still, I think the homeless count sat at 225 people, and this is approximately 18 to 20 beds. if we were to get a temporary use permit, which we don't have in this, at this time, they were talking about 6 to 10 beds. So I think in no means, unfortunately, are these beds covering anywhere near the need. So the fact that they are taking on the 5 to 6 month year winter shelter is the reason I'm compelled to give the 31,752, but it's basically covering about 10% of the current need with this one shelter. So it's not gonna change if we get a temporary use permit in future or not, but we don't have one right now. Councillor Grant.
Wondering if someone can tell me how much we've got in our affordable housing fund right now.
Pass it over, but the number that was given was just under 2 million the other day. So unless we've spent some.
Okay, so this is a relatively small piece of that. And if we just do 1 year, if things change over the next year, we're not committed to those years. So I'm fine with this.
Yeah, and I believe CEO Walsh shared, we're being asked for about 18%, and that's of the operating and not of the purchase of the building. And so it's relatively small for the amount of work that the city is putting in over there.
Could we ask the city next time they send us a letter to be a little more clear on what they're asking for? Because I read that about 5 times and honestly, the number could have been anything.
We'll see when we send the number if it's the right number. Okay, so we have the motion for the 1 year and to follow up in year 2 and year 3. Are there any other questions or comments about that $31,752 going to the full year round, not full year round, but winter shelter, which will be every night during the winter? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. We will send that communication. The next letter is on page 289 for receipt on Will Cole Hamilton, Chair of the Regional District, notice and request for comment on the Regional Growth Strategy minor amendment. Okay, it's been moved or seconded, and comments, which is what they're looking for. Councillor Haslett.
I just want to confirm that in this minor amendment here, that like you see that in the scope of the amendment that they've got here in their letter or email, it's really just cleaning up a lot of language. There's nothing that I could see that was buried in this, but I just want to make sure I'm on this name. All they're trying to do here. Yeah.
Sounds good. It's basically 7 bullet points on page 290 there, and none of them stand out, but I might ask if Councillor Grant has any things that we may need to be aware of.
No, I think you hit it right on the head. That's exactly what it is.
It does look like it says update to map languages. It seems like it's nothing major. Do we have a mic down on that side? No questions over there. That mic is really throwing me off. The ghost mic is throwing me off.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like they were looking for comment, but if we don't have comment, we can just send that we're supportive of that amendment. So all those in favor of sending support of those changes, or no comment along? Of course, Councillor Haslett.
And maybe this goes to Councillor Grant, but I'm just looking for a little more clarification here as to what add a reference to the developed action plan each aid. Anyone has a little?
I do not, but I will go over to Councillor Grant in
I
case
don't
he's
think you're right. It would be something that I think Alana down at staff at the would be looking into. I have no answer for that.
I'd just be, if they're looking for comment, I'd like a little bit more clarity around what an action plan is, but it's just a pretty vague term, and terms can end up costing a substantial amount of money.
So we can either amend it and ask for clarification, or we can have it go offline. I'll leave that up to you whether you want to amend the current motion.
If I can amend the motion to have a little more clarity on what the action plans are, the 8 RGS goals, that would be great.
And they may just get back to us that they have to establish an action plan, and that can be the answer. So that motion as amended, that we would like further details on that point, but we're supportive overall. Yeah, but we are supportive overall, so not to stall them correct on the amendment, just for curiosity. Okay, all those in favor of that amended motion? Opposed? And that passes. Thank you. We will receive the correspondence on page 92 from the Comox Valley Marina.
That
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Although we have already made that motion. All those in favor?
That's fine.
Sorry, do you want to comment on that? So that was pushed forward to the public hearing as a addition on M2. And all those in favor of receipt? Opposed? And that passes. Thank you. We are going to do reports from members of council just in time. We'll start with Councillor Blacklock.
Well, Comox is preparing for a big evening on Friday, and I won't say too much more about that, but I would like to remind everyone of another community event happening December 2nd down at 40 Knots Winery. It's the annual Rotary Cookie Auction. And so if you'd like to come out and look at purchasing some cookies, that would be a fun thing to do with the kids at 40 Knots on December 2nd. That's all I have this week.
And you have tickets, serious. Okay, Councillor Swift.
Maybe if I just sit on it. There we are. I have really nothing to report, just reminding everybody that it's also the Philberg's Winterfest from 3 until 7 this Saturday. And there'll be lots of things for kids to do and some vendors there with Christmas things. So if you're looking for something to do, come out and enjoy the Philberg Park. The lights will be on, Santa will be there, and it should be lots of fun. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Haslett.
I attended the court.
You for reporting my absence. Councillor Grant.
Well, you'd think I'd be smarter than this over the years, but I got a call from Councillor Swift asking me to go to the TACPAC meeting and not to worry, it's a very short meeting. It'll just be, you won't have to do anything. You're just going to collect your money and walk away. The agenda was 592 pages. So I did attend that and she was right. It actually was pretty quick. And I also attended the Remembrance Day ceremony along with most everyone else. So.
Perfect. Thank you. I will just mention, as Councillor Blacklock alluded, it's the winter market in downtown Comox. So we'll have the street closures on Friday night from 3 to 7. A bunch of the businesses are participating in the red carpet sales event. So there's a list of businesses sales. So you're welcome to share those out. The tree lighting will be at approximately 5:15. But really, we're just trying to cross promote. Friday 3 to 7 is our winter market, and then Saturday 3 to 7 is the Philberg outdoor market. So we've got 2 markets in Comox this weekend, and we seem to be getting more and more people every year. So it should be really great. Thanks to everyone who was able to attend the Remembrance Day ceremony, including the fire department was out with about 20 volunteer, mostly members. So it was a really great afternoon, and we have gotten some feedback on how to make that even better. So thanks to the community for coming out to that. Tomorrow, we will be sending out a press release for our 80th anniversary of incorporation for the town of Comox, which is coming up January 14th, 2026. So we will be having a short council meeting on that Wednesday night and be doing an open house tour and event at the museum on that Wednesday evening. And there will be a whole week of festivities with the museum and Pearl Ellis Gallery on January 12th to 18th. And basically that will launch tomorrow. We're asking residents, businesses, council, staff, anyone to submit images from the last 80 years that they have around town. And communications, and Corinne and Cami have got some really fun prizes, and we'll be basically highlighting images that people send in to us. So we're looking forward to seeing some of the places and people around town. And you'll see the draft news release today, but it'll go out tomorrow. So if anyone asks you about it, you have the news one day early. And we had a leadership meeting with the base and police departments, mayors, roundtable, and everyone gave their updates. And I will just say, it seems like there's a lot of things going on in the valley in each different sector. The Air Force Base really stressed that they're going really operational. So the air show was canceled, and they're looking at about 50% growth in the next 5 years now, potentially. So we'll be hearing more about that, I think, in the upcoming 6 months, 12 months, but we are going to see quite a bit of growth down at our base. And similar to the police force, they're looking for a new station over the next couple of years. They're looking for new officers. So it seemed like around the table growth was the big discussion, though we know it's not a huge projection, but everywhere is kind of bursting at the seams. And that is it for myself. I hope to see everybody out on Friday and Saturday celebrating our town events and promoting them to the other areas. I believe the road is open on those days, so people will be able to come into Comox, which is really exciting. Are there any questions from the public? Okay, no media questions. Thank you. So we will move for adjournment at 6:42. Seconded, all those in favor? And thank you so much to senior leadership for the meeting tonight.
Is this the one?